We're so thrilled today to be joined by Pam Gregory. And thank you all so much for being here. I'm going to read a little bit about Pam and then we'll dive into our conversation. So Pam Gregory is an internationally known astrologer who is blessed to stumble across the subject when she was 22. She has a very active YouTube channel, Pam Gregory Astrology, with over 200,000 subscribers. And through her website, pamgregory.com, she offers teaching videos and a detailed monthly newsletter. And her main focus is how we can use astrology strategically to live better and bigger lives. She's the author of 2 books, You Don't Really Believe in Astrology, Do You? And How to Co-Create Using the Secret Language of the Universe. Pam has been involved with astrology for 45 years. Her interest lies in seeing astrology in the context of our spiritual journey and how new astrological discoveries are expanding our view of our life on Earth. Pam, thank you so much for being here.
Real joy and pleasure, Emily in Brooklyn. Wonderful to be with you.
Yes. You know, you wrote recently, the feeling of harmony and unity consciousness begins with us. There is no other way. The powers that were are not going to offer that to us. This is an age of the power of the people to create it.
Yeah, 100%. I feel that in every cell of my body. This is our age of mastery, actually, that even in probably the most extreme times that any of us have ever lived through, we can know what's going on, we can observe the drama, but despite that, we can rise above it and say, no, that is not a world I want. I'm going to create something beautiful. But it's got to come from the inside out, because we live from the inside out, and astrology kind of proves that, because whenever I look at someone's chart and they, I may never have spoken to them before, they may have given me a false name, which is fine as long as the birth date is correct, but I can track through their lives and see particular events and happenings at various ages and years, and therefore also look forwards. And it works. It's simply accurate because I'm looking at the birth chart, which is the inner psyche of the person, and seeing how they're projecting it out, they're living it out in the world. Now, if we weren't living from the inside out, I couldn't see that. If we were living from the outside in, it wouldn't be in the birth chart. So it originates from us. And if we're feeling scattered and fearful and angry and hateful and all of those things, we are just going to keep on living in that frequency, attracting more and more and more of it. So it begins with us.
Absolutely. And I've heard you describe the birth chart as almost a sheet of music. You know, it has infinite potential, and it's really our level of consciousness that determines the quality of our lives and the activations really of those planetary alignments. You know, there's so much that's happening in this year from an astrological perspective that's really supporting our evolution. And I was wondering if you could talk about maybe some of the key themes from your perspective.
Yes, I mean, there's so many. It's hard to know where to start, but I think if we look broadly at 2012 to 2032, because these are that's the real period of spiritual acceleration, if you like. And 2032 has always been prophesied in ancient prophecies to be the beginning of the golden age. And we're right in that pivot point right now. We're at the midpoint. And right at the beginning of the year, I recorded a video called Themes for 2022. And I still stand by that, because in that I was saying this is going to be the most intense, extreme, turbulent, chaotic, wild, and absolutely blissful at times year of our lives, because it's a huge period of breakdown, and the breakdown is necessary before we can break through. You know, if we're going to fit new kitchen cupboards, we can't just fit them on top of the old ones. We have to smash out the old ones and make a mess, and then we can fit the new ones in. And that's a terribly basic analogy, but it's kind of how it is. The old system has to break down, or systems have to break down. And it's going to happen really in every area. I think education, legal, political, medical, financial, and is already beginning. So major aspects. I mean, for just to start with Pluto in the US, you have the Pluto Return, which you're probably well aware of, because Pluto has a 246 to 248 year orbit. So it's coming back to its 1776 place. And for America, that is in the second house of the country's economy and values, but it's also in Capricorn, which is to do with the Constitution. What is America? What values does America stand for? So particularly in America, but this is rippling across the world, as Pluto comes back to those last few degrees in Capricorn, it is going to kind of dig deep in terms of who is the US? What is the US? Is it going to be comprised of the same states as we move forward, literally geographically? What will happen to the Constitution? What will happen to the politics, the government, the economy, all of those things? And I think you're probably well aware already of what's starting to happen with all of that. But because Pluto only has kind of 3 degrees to go in Capricorn, Pluto's job in any sign is to unearth the shadow of that sign. So in Capricorn, this is to do with top-down structures, government, corporations, institutions that apparently have more power over us and our lives. It's also to do with banking and big business. And what Pluto does is unearth any corruption, any lack of integrity, any secrets, any lack of accountability, and it digs up the dirt. So it doesn't have far to go, because it starts to move out of Capricorn March next year, but it moves fully out of Capricorn by the end of 2024. So it has to complete that job, as it were, as I see it, by the end of 2024, when we move into a very different age, actually with respect to the Earth's energy lines as well, which I can refer to. So that's one very big aspect. And another aspect to sort of reinforce that is the nodal axis of the moon until July next year is in Taurus and Scorpio. That is the axis to do with banking, again, wealth, currencies, taxes, also it's to do with food, our food supply system, agriculture. So all of these are going to be quite challenged. Scorpio, we've got this massive total lunar eclipse coming up on Sunday, Monday in Scorpio. That is to do often with deeply repressed secrets of the rich and powerful, sexual secrets, financial secrets. So that, together with the movement of Pluto in Capricorn, is really going to do the business to dig up anything untoward that is not for our highest good that we need to know. And then on top of that, I guess I'd say the other major aspect this year is a square, which is a clash between the planet Saturn and the planet Uranus. Now, Saturn represents, again, government, institutions, corporations. It's to do with top-down authorities, yet again, because it rules Capricorn. It's to do with rules and regulations for your safety, all of that kind of dictated matrix that comes from governmental bodies. And it's to do with the past. We've always done it this way. You've always obeyed government. So it's very much linked to centralization as well, central governments. However, Uranus is the planet of freedom. So no way am I going to obey the rules. No way. I'm a free person. I'm sovereign. I'm a maverick. I'm going to run my own life. And how dare you? I'm not going to be kind of herded into any kind of rules, regulations, and compliance. And so Uranus is also linked to decentralization. In Taurus, it's linked to decentralization of currency, so cryptocurrencies that grow from the grassroots up, that are not centrally controlled, of growing our own food, Taurus, getting together with like-minded people. So these are the communities that are, Uranus very linked to communities that are starting to form, and Uranus is the planet of the future. So in the battles between Saturn and Uranus, Saturn will ultimately always win because it's the planet of the future and Saturn's the planet of the past, but it won't be without a struggle. Uranus is also the planet of higher mind. It's the planet of awakening. It's the planet of the galactics. So this is very exciting stuff. But then, shall I just keep talking, Emily?
Well, I want to just say, I mean, that those are some major themes right there. And as you're talking, I have goosebumps because it really reminds me of this, creative alchemy, this goddess Kali energy almost of destruction, rebirth, but also a time that's really potent with creative potential.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what's so exciting. And this is going to come to a crescendo. I mean, Saturn and Uranus have kind of eased away from exactitude at the moment, but they're coming back to be exactly in a square by degree in October. And those last 3-4 months of the year are going to be the crescendo.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask too, it was interesting as you're talking, I received sort of downloads on this year in a different way. Yes, playing into astrology, but I have no, knowledge really of astrology in this lifetime. Just, basics. And so I so appreciate your wisdom and grace and all that you're bringing in, because it gives me an even, kind of grander, as I'm looking at sort of the quantum fabric of what's taking place right now. I'm like, yes, this all makes sense. I'm curious, when you're speaking of that that interaction between Saturn and Uranus, right? How much does all of the plasma light and, like the photon belt and all of that play into it? Because as you're speaking and you're talking about like the longevity, if you will, of Saturn's influence, right, being the past and the future, what I was kind of receiving simultaneously is there's some pretty hefty plasma frequencies and codes that are going to come in to sort of continue to rattle that a little bit and sort of hold that greater sort of placement or energy, if you will, of Uranus to carry out even beyond what shows up astrologically. And I'm curious if that makes sense from an astrological
completely. And it's so exciting. I mean, Uranus represents geomagnetics, for instance. So, in Taurus is the Earth. And so firstly, we are moving through the photon belt, which we only ever do as Earth around about every 12,000 years, give or take 500. And then we have a whole different process happening of coronal mass ejections. But just to stay with the photon belt first, this photonic energy, which a lot of us can see, is very white, bright light. It's very different from the kind of softer golden light that we used to have. It's very, very high frequency energy, and it is upgrading our cells in every moment. And then we get to the point of saying, okay, what is your level of consciousness in terms of how much of that light can you embody? Because we're embodying more and more light as we move to becoming light bodies, more and more, and we lose density. At the same time, because the Earth is going through her own upgrade, we have a phenomenal level of coronal mass ejections, M-class, X-class flares. I mean, I've mentioned this in a video, but if you go back to 2018, we only had 26 coronal mass ejections. This year, they are forecast to be up to 1,000 of them, and many, many M-class and X-class flares. We're just starting an X-class flare, which is as big as you can get right now, today. Just started a couple of hours ago. It's crazy. So we are having, on average, more of these coronal mass ejections, M-class, X-class flares, in 24 hours very often than we had in the whole of 2018. Now that becomes destabilizing. Uranus is destabilizing, so we can make these quantum jumps, but it is also very much part of our evolutionary process, because as the Earth is upgrading, we have to upgrade with her because we live on the Earth. So we're kind of sandwiched between, these whizzy, incredible magnetics, photon belt, etc., and the Earth going through her own upgrade. So we're kind of sandwiched in between them. And although it can feel a bit crazy physically, because our little energy systems have to kind of move faster than they've ever done to keep pace with this new energy that's coming in, for sure, it is upgrading us. All of that energy is upgrading us in every moment. It's also magnifying whatever emotion we feel. You know, if we're angry, more anger. If we're in bliss, more bliss. It actually magnifies that. But yes, I'm getting very interested in plasma myself, because what I understand is if we are in coherent emotion, love, joy, gratitude, bliss, we are forming very coherent geometries in the plasma. And the reason I'm getting so interested in plasma, and you can probably, as you say, you can see it, Brooklin, is because it's a kind of interim stage between intention, focus, frequency, and manifestation. And therefore, the more coherent the geometry we can form in the plasma, the more beautiful the manifestation we're going to pull towards us.
Yeah.
So that's why it's so important. And you know, I'm going to be talking a lot more about plasma, actually, because I think it can help people to understand how reality is formed, because it gives them that interim step.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I'll interject because perhaps this will play into more of what you're bringing through, is that so something that came in at the winter solstice of 2021 was, and M was sharing with me, you know, prior to engaging today, about the photon belt, which I had heard about, but you know, it wasn't really in my channeled vernacular, if you will. More so, what came through was this resurrection of what this One Source Collective refers to as a diamond plasma sunbelt, which when M brought in the photon belt, I started to realize that the photon belt is our universal system's catalyzing sort of vehicle for this higher sort of source, if you will, central channel of the all that is what they refer to it as, to drop in and have a more fluid medium, if you will, to enter into the Earth's atmosphere and enter into each of our atmospheres. So it's really exciting that, you know, your presence here and all that you've brought forth is bringing a greater clarity to some of these messages that are coming through. So additionally, in that diamond plasma sunbelt was brought forth this particular ray of this diamond blue plasma. And what it's being referred to is a sixth element. And apparently, there are 12 elements of this universal system. And so we have some more to look forward to. And as you were talking about 2032, what dropped in is that within this time frame of, you know, of now until then, the other elements of these plasma frequencies are going to also have the opportunity to resurrect and come forth into our greater awareness and expression. So it's really exciting. I'm so grateful for you here on so many levels, and for kind of further bringing the clarity of that. And then the other thing that wanted to perhaps be brought forth in that is that we were being shown that there are these massive portals, these portal systems that are resurrecting, sort of in conjunction with astrology. And again, because I don't have a real broad foundation of that, one of them took place on the 22nd of April. The next one is meant to take place next on the 21st of May. And then the third being on summer solstice. So I wondered if in that, if there's anything that makes sense to you, and why those particular dates or time frames, you know, are being shown.
Wow. I mean, there's just so much there. I mean, certainly the summer solstice, the solstices and equinoxes are so powerful, because the veil, if you like, between us and the higher realms is thinned. The magnetic shield of the Earth cracks, and the cracks are formed by solar winds. So that these cracks are massive, you know, they can be as wide as California. So literally, we are much more open to the energy of the sun than we are at other times. And therefore we're getting more, you know, the thing is we're getting more new information, both from the photon belt, photonic light, and from the coronal mass ejections, etc. We are getting new information, which are the building blocks of us, new information that we have never had before. And that's why we're gradually becoming the new human. And certainly April 22nd, you know, that's just after that mystical Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, which was so beautiful. That was like a spiritual tsunami. April 22nd was very significant, because I think, yeah, we're just running, that's the run into the eclipse period with the solar eclipse in Taurus. And then, as I say, the summer solstice, those solstices and equinox. Strength and width of the energy lines of the earth. And what he has discovered is the day before every equinox and solstice, all of the energy lines come into harmony. Then, and it used to just happen for one day, then it's now expanded to 14 days. But he said and this happens, as I say, just before solstices and equinoxes, but by December 2024, when Pluto leaves Capricorn for the last time for another 240 something years, all of the Earth's energy lines will come into harmony for 200 years. Ooh. And that will be an age of peace.
Yay!
So these rapid jumps, you know, these Uranian quantum jumps in our state of being, literally our physical state of being, as much as our psychological, spiritual, emotional state of being, are happening at the most intense speed, I think, this year. And although it'll keep on rocking through the next 10 years particularly, because this is the midway point, this is where we're going to feel that tipping point, as it were, very, very strongly. So there's going to be a ton of demolition. It's happening all around us, and it's very easy to get caught up in the color and the drama. And wow, can you believe what's come out? You know, wow, you look at this. Wow. You know, but it's very easy for us as human beings. But our mastery comes in staying on our eagle's perch and say, yeah, see what's happening. That is absolutely in line with the astrology. I expected that to happen, and ping, right on time, it's happening. And now I've got to turn my focus to creating, only creating with love, joy, gratitude, bliss, heart-centered, heart connection communities. And that's what's happening all over the world. I mean, it really is happening now, we're not just dreaming about it in the future, we're dreaming it in right now in physicality. And it's really exciting.
It is so exciting. You know, as you're speaking, and I know Em and I have spoken about this and, you know, received some downloads, etc., about two, you know, main archetypes that seem to really drop in to support, you know, this bandwidth of human, you know, the expansion of human consciousness, is the archetype of sovereignty and, you know, and the archetype of neutrality. And, you know, and how they, you know, what was shown of, you know, of Gaia's blueprint, you know, around that time of I think it was February 22nd-ish, is that some of the higher angelic creator beings came in to say that, you know, Gaia has transcended her own blueprint of sovereignty, catapulting us, you know, as the human collective into an even grander invitation of that. And it feels like that's very succinct with a lot of the things that, you know, Em has brought in astrologically, as well as, you know, what you're sharing here, which brings just a lot of excitement and, you know, invitation, I feel like, to all of us.
Yeah, it's just so exciting. And actually, Brooklyn, when you were talking earlier, one point that was coming into my head, as you know, I'm getting very interested in the Kuiper belt objects, some of which are dwarf planets. And they are a whole new evolution of consciousness for us, because they operate on quantum principles, not 3D, not 3D. You write a business plan, you take it to the bank manager, he gives you a, you know, it's not that slog of logic and 3D. It's you set a clear intention, you focus, you release it to the universe, you trust it will arrive, and it does. It's that kind of magic. But particularly when you're talking about the new light codes, etc., there's a beautiful dwarf planet you may have heard me talk about called Salacia. Mermaid energy. In myth, she was the wife of Neptune, and she manifests as the iridescent sunlight and moonlight on the sea, in that very sparkly light. So to me, she is the representation for photonic light. She's like liquid light from which we are creating. And of course, we've always created from light, but we had no darned idea about that. You know, we were Luddite, no conception that we were creating from light, but there's a dawning awareness now that we are creating from light. And the more we can raise our frequency, the more we can literally start to work with that as molding clay, you know, of our new reality.
Yeah, phenomenal. And what I'm getting as you're sharing that is the sacred source consciousness of water dropping in to say, and what's beautiful is one, and I was sort of deviated a little bit before because I got so excited, is that, you know, one of the ways that really dropped in palpably in terms of how can we as, you know, humans having the awareness of all these plasma light codes and things that are taking place, you know, how can we, you know, with the awareness, work to incorporate them more gracefully and to interact and to, you know, and to embody more gracefully and to also assist, you know, the carbon-based DNA on its transition into, you know, crystalline, right, and light. And what came forth in a pretty big way is that, you know, and they always have been, is, you know, are the elemental consciousness of water, of air, of earth, of fire, of, you know, of ether. And, you know, and now this diamond blue plasma coming in, and what they were showing of it is, you know, the plasma holds a space for these elemental frequencies to resurrect out of the third consciousness, you know, as well, in whatever ways that, you know, they've been manipulated or, you know, sort of within their quantum fabric, and bring them into the highest placement of their blueprint. And as that's taking place, you know, they're here to assist us even more than they already have been. So that it strengthens the unified field of consciousness, but it also assists us, and especially those who are carrying maybe, you know, a little bit more of a sluggishness, if you will, to, or perhaps some more resistance to the openness and the flow of ascension. They're here to really assist us. So when you were talking about the dwarf planets, and the one in particular with the mermaid energy, you know, immediately this water consciousness dropped in, and, you know, of course, our cellular water, right? And so really connecting and directing and programming our own cellular water. But it feels like the energy of that planet that you are speaking of is here to remind us how to do that too. And it's very much a catalyzing energy to conduit and to ground into our physicality, that instant manifestation, that whole new framework, if you will, or lack thereof, of how to create. So
absolutely, you know, yeah, beautifully said. And one of the wonderful things is the physics of light is unstoppable. You know, nobody, doesn't matter what job they have, what title they have, what organization they work for, the physics of light is unstoppable because it's part of our evolutionary blueprint. It's going to keep on coming. And with regard to how do we help this process? Because I think I said in a video a while ago that if we look at all the problems of the world, there are just thousands of, you know, there's war, there's poverty, there's disease, awful things. But if you look at all of those, you can just feel totally overwhelmed. Where do I begin? It's going to take me 1,000 years. And what can I, as a tiny individual, do to help all of those problems? And you start to feel scattered and overwhelmed. But if you say, okay, I acknowledge those things are happening in the world, and actually they're all part of just one thing, which is the manifestation of low frequency energy. So my job, therefore, our job, each of us, is to say, okay, how do we raise that? And you can raise that. I mean, I'm a very simple being. Honestly, I am. So nature for me is always my touchstone. So I go out on my morning walks, and luckily I live in an area which has beautiful woodland and streams and forests, etc. And I can, particularly at the moment, the colours are just lit up. It's like the trees, you know, have got sort of iridescent bulbs inside them. I've never seen the colours being so vibrant. And I don't know whether that's my frequency increasing, the Earth's frequency increasing, a combination, I don't know what. And I just milk it. I just celebrate. It's quite annoying if I'm walking with someone because I'm saying, look at the green, look at the green. I've never seen green like that. And all the gorse is out. It's been out for weeks. I've never seen it so bright or so. Look at the yellow. Look at the yellow. But I milk it and celebrate it, and I'm grateful for every part of nature, a blue sky if we ever have one in the UK. So I celebrate all of that and say, you know, thank you, thank you, thank you for this. There are lots of wild ponies here where I live and wild donkeys, and I always chat to them on my morning walks and bless them and just try and live with an open heart. And every being I meet, I try to meet them with love. And if you have a challenging relationship somewhere, I mean, I have a particular neighbor who can be quite challenging. I just keep sending her love. I just keep sending her love. And it does alter the dynamics of any relationship which is channeling, challenging. Challenging. So if you just live in love and send out love to nature, to all living beings, to birds, to everything kind of comes alive. It's like you light it up with your own energy and doing those really, really simple things. And here we're not even talking about sitting down and meditating or doing breath work, which you can do as well. We're just talking about living in joy, gratitude, bliss, and love. And as you will know, that massively expands the torus field around your heart, which is, I think, at least 5,000 times bigger and stronger than that of the brain, because it's that the heart sends a lot more information to the brain than the other way around. And our hearts are becoming activated and energized in a way that they never have been before, because we're moving into a heart-centered evolutionary period. And so the more you just live in that simple way, you don't have to go on a course, you don't have to spend money. It's not sophisticated or complicated. It's complicated if you look at the news. It's really complicated. But if you just stick to living from the outside in those simple ways, then it's impossible that you don't raise the collective frequency. You have to raise the frequency because it's physics. It's, you know, you want to or not, that's going to bring up the average of the collective consciousness. So you're playing your part actually energetically in a very big way, even though you just think you're strolling in the woods. Does that make sense? It was a bit of a rant.
Yeah, I love that so much.
Not only does it make sense, but like I feel like my, you know, heart right now is skipping through the woods.
Yeah, I love it. I can be a child again.
Yeah.
And the simple joy of being a child again. I take my neighbour's dog out every day, throw sticks for him in the stream, and I'm a 4-year-old child again, and it's absolutely joyful.
Yeah.
But it's also helping the collective, so it's not complicated.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I mean, we all hold a unique puzzle piece, and it is through our joy and our expansion of our you know, higher levels of consciousness that we're able to you know, really impact the collective. And so that's why I'm so inspired by your work, Pam. I want to ask you a personal question of just really your journey with astrology. I know that you have Mercury at 1 degree of Aries on the world axis. And, you know, from your perspective, you know, does that really, you know, allow you to, you know, support you in this journey of sharing and writing on the world stage? And are there other elements that have, you know, supported this journey?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I can't suppress that. So there are lots of things I can't do in life, but I can write and speak, I think. Whenever you have a planet on the world axis, 0 of the cardinals, 2 degrees all, by the way, so 28 of the mutables to 2 degrees of the cardinals, there is the potential to put that principle, for me it's Mercury, out on the world stage, or in, doesn't necessarily have to be thousands of people, but in front of the public in a bigger way. And so for sure, I was here as a messenger. I'm here as a messenger, and that's very much how I see myself. And then many other parts of the chart that support it, that support that interest in astrology. And I know I've done it in several lifetimes before. This isn't the first time around the track, as it were. But the Mercury has helped me get it out in the world. And my overwhelming desire is to empower people with the astrology, not that I provide all the answers, because I'm not God. You know, I don't know, and it's your life to live. So I want to give people the language of astrology, because it really is a language to empower them in their lives on their own unique journeys. So yeah, I don't know what my life would have been without astrology. I mean, it's been so immensely enriched in every possible way, both on the level of times when I was going through very, very big personal challenges. And even though they were very tough, I could see the meaning in them. I could see the meaning of what the universe was trying to tell me at that point. And so it doesn't mean astrologers have perfect lives at all, but you can always get the meaning. And if you've got the meaning, that enables you to get through that very challenging period with focus and with purpose. And that's a huge bonus, I think. Otherwise, you can be quite at sea if they're very big, you know, health, relationship, marriage challenges, whatever. So I think that's been a very big part of it. And I also think astrology, although it's very practical as a framework, is actually a spiritual framework, because it enables you to play the music, the analogy I've used all the way through, to play your unique sheet of music at a much higher level, because now you've got the sheet of music that you can see. You realize what you're working with as a cosmic map in this lifetime. And it's very much this lifetime. That changes with every lifetime. But for this lifetime, that's your song sheet.
Yes.
And are you going to massacre it, or are you going to make it magnificent? So it enables you to shift gear once you understand the sheet of music. If you haven't got the sheet of music, I think it's harder to kind of find your way through. It's trial and error much more. Whereas if you've got a sheet of music, it gives you the actual language. Oh, that's why, you know, so-and-so's good at languages, or good at maths, or good at sport, or whatever. You can see it on a piece of paper. And it's fantastic, of course, with children, that children in a family are often very different in their skills and talents. Well, you can see it. And so you can help the parents to encourage that child to blossom in that particular arena, whereas another child is flowering over in this arena. So it's ever so practical. But it can also give you, what astrology, I could talk for hours actually, but what astrology also gives me enormously is a sense of divinity in my life. A sense of divinity and co-creating with source in every moment. Because, you know, the old view of astrology, and to some extent it still is, that it's fated. You know, what's going to happen tomorrow? What's going to happen next month, this year? It's fated. It's like a film set we step onto. But it isn't. Tomorrow's invisible. You know, we're creating it in every moment. So that co-creation element is very, very empowering for us. We have a role in this. We're not just passive, taking what comes at us, the rubber hitting the road. You're stepping into the role of creator and saying, okay, this chart is potentially magnificent as a piece of music. How can I have the best possible life playing this out in the world? How can I go beyond my current circumstances and just up my game to make it magnificent?
I love that. Yeah. I mean, it just brings so much relevance to what comes through all the time, that, you know, we are the choosers of our lens, right? And the choosers of our choices. And yes, we have a blueprint that we come in with, But, you know, I feel like what's really coming into greater invitation through all that you're bringing forth in your beautiful sharing and Heartlight is that, you know, how we meet that blueprint, you know, with where we're resonating in our field of consciousness opens up whole new levels and layers to how that is expressed. So, you know, if we're working in those higher frequencies, like you're saying, of love and joy and gratitude and bliss and, you know, and compassion and so forth, you know, that it feels like that blueprint opens up and blossoms in ways in which, you know, otherwise we wouldn't experience. So
yeah, and we have beautiful lives that are so fulfilling and can help the world so much more than if we stay small.
Yes. Pam, in your practice, how much do the nodes play in on an individual level to our ability to, you know, play the music, if it were?
Yeah, really interesting question, Emily, because before I wrote the book, How to Co-Create Using the Secret Language of the Universe, to be honest, when I was studying astrology, very little was taught about the nodes. It's massive in Indian astrology, Vedic astrology. The nodal axis is the most important thing in your chart. I mean, that's what an Indian astrologer will begin with, will start with. So it sort of dominates that modality of astrology. But in Western astrology, it was very little talked about, really. And so just a few years ago, I started to get very interested in it. And boy, did that take me on a journey, a magic carpet ride of past lives and extraordinary events that we haven't got time to go into. But it really, in writing the book, the chart stopped being circular. The chart became kind of like a pear drop. So the North Node in our charts, which is where we are supposed to grow, the direction of growth, soul's growth in this lifetime, becomes like the compass needle. And the rest of the chart is like the cavalry, the backup brigade. And I literally started to see the chart morph and change in shape to support that North Node. So to answer your question, Emily, more and more I'm focused on that North Node is where does this individual soul need to get to in growth in order for them to feel fulfilled and satisfied in life. Because it's very comfortable to fall back on our South Node where we've been in our past lives, gifts and skills we've already mastered. But with us, that's done. Yes, we can still bring those through in this life, but where's the virgin territory? Where's the new place we've got to get to that may feel uncomfortable because it's unfamiliar? But that's the compass needle. And so more and more, I'm bringing that into the astrology. And I mean, it's super important this year because Uranus is so close to that North Node. And it becomes exact last week of July, first week of August. So that's going to be a very tumultuous period of awakening, I think, or galactic communication or whatever, however it's going to manifest. But it's not going to be dull.
yeah, just in time for Lionsgate.
Yeah.
Yeah. warming us up.
Yeah.
We have a lot that's happening leading up to that, you know, Aries, Jupiter goes into Aries tomorrow. And then, you know, as you mentioned earlier, we have a total lunar eclipse in Scorpio on Sunday. Could you share a little bit more about those transits? And also somebody asked about working with eclipse energy.
Yes, I mean, lunar eclipses are like big full moons. So that a full moon any month is always a time of release what no longer serves you. But this is big time release what no longer serves you. Plus it's a super moon. So the moon is literally very close to the earth in its orbit. So that intensifies the emotion. So this is happening on an individual level. People are stepping away from relationships, jobs, homes. They're stepping into a new episode, almost like the Fool in the Tarot, not quite knowing where they're going. But on a collective level, this is like a purging. This is a purging of old energy. And that's why I think we're already starting to see so many truths coming to light, so many revelations, which will be shocking and destabilizing, but it all has to happen because Uranus is very highlighted at this total lunar eclipse because it's aspecting the world axis. Jupiter's on the world axis. So they are, you know, writ large, as it were, planets of truth, freedom, and justice, Jupiter. So I think a huge amount is going to come to light. And remember, because sometimes people say, well, nothing happened to me on May 16th. Well, it isn't just, it's not a pinpoint, it's a process. This energy is going to last for another 6 months. So I would very much encourage you as individuals to think, okay, what do I really value? What are the core values in my life, Taurus, that I want to move forwards with or bring new values in? For instance, being in a loving, joyful community. That may be a new one that you haven't lived already, but it's very much part of the zeitgeist of where we're going. So what are your real core values that you want to move forwards with into the future? And what do you know is just a done deal? What makes you feel heavy? What makes you feel stale and dead? Is it the job? Is it the friendship? Is it your environment in some way where you're living? What is it? And just have a ceremony of some kind at the eclipse. You can write a letter to yourself and burn it in the fire, or imagine that you're sending it out to the light, but just release, because this is one of the biggest peaks of the year in terms of letting the old go. And in letting the old go, we encourage the new to come in all the faster.
So exciting. It's also got its many, many layers and flavors. As I noticed this morning when I woke up, I was like, what is about to take place here? I'm feeling some big things moving. So, but it just brings so much, hope, and it feels like, it's so much in the flow of our divine nature of rebirth and resurrection and constant, evolution and expansion and creation anew. So it's really exciting.
It is.
It is. And I mean, there are going to be some wild times because Uranus in Taurus is also about extreme earth events. So it's about volcanoes, floods, earthquakes, all kinds of unpredictable extreme events because of the unstable geomagnetics. Could be pole shifts, not this year, I don't think, but in future. So there could be some radical climate shifts, all kinds of things. But know that is happening with a purpose, an evolutionary purpose. Do not go into fear. Into fear, not interfere. Do not go into fear. Stay in love. Ideally be with like-minded people that you can really link with, because they give you a lot of strength. It's easier to be strong when you're in a group of strong people. I'd really encourage you to do that. And those groups are just popping up all over the world. And they are the beginning of New Earth. They are creating New Earth. They have working groups of homeschooling, how to grow your own food, new medical systems beginning. They are literally forming a new parallel society. And if you get involved in one of those, then that becomes really empowering. So stay out of fear. Know that we're on track for quantum jumps in our evolution.
I love that. Pam, I heard you talk about deep space planets. I was wondering if you could share a little bit more about those and what excites you about that study, and also right now, what is most exciting for you as an astrologer?
I think it's studying those Kuiper belt objects, because not many astrologers are looking at them. And I just get so excited when I start to study their symbolism. And of course, we're learning all the time because they've only been recently discovered around about 2000, give or take, 5 years or so. And so that's a drop in the ocean in terms of astrology, which has been going for at least 6,000 years and probably longer. So I think it's the quantum jump aspect of them. If I look at a dwarf planet like Quawa, that is linked to the indigenous tribes. The Quawa is a creator god, Quaoar, far too many vowels in it, but it's linked to a creator god from the indigenous people who lived around the Los Angeles basin originally. And the myth, the symbolism around Quawa was that you don't create from 3D, from any kind of low frequency emotion. You sing and dance into high frequency, and then you set your intention and you manifest. So you create through joy, but they absolutely knew that you had to get to a higher frequency before you set your intention and manifest it. Or another dwarf planet I like a lot is Haumea. And she is linked to the Hawaiian goddess of fertility. And in the myth, she could summon wild food, even though the land had been laid waste with poor farming for whatever reasons, chemicals, pesticides. She could just, with her magic stick, the makalai, she could just summon fish from the seas and wild food from the land. And it's that kind of regenerative, creative, magical energy that I believe we truly are moving towards. We are moving towards kind of magical manifestation in a way that we've never lived before or thought possible. It was just kind of crazy talk. And that's what we're moving into. And people are starting to do this now, setting clear intentions, focusing, releasing it to the universe, and bingo, it arrives. And I've had moments like that, you know, increasingly. And the more it starts to happen, you think, hey, I'm in the magic zone. You know, the magic, this is just kind of crazy, but I'm going to stick with it because it's working. And so that is exciting, going beyond the planets we've known for many, many thousands of years, and say, because we, you know, even thousands of years ago, ordinary people could see with the naked eye out to Saturn. That was the boundary of where they could see to. So it's interesting that Saturn rules boundaries, but we're going way beyond that now. And so, yeah, I think that's it, Emily. I think it's the Kuiper Belt objects, which there's so much to know, there's so much to explore and research.
I love that. You know, it's so interesting because I remember, I'm just having this sort of flashback of a conversation that Emily and I had. I feel like it was maybe a year ago or so. And so many downloads are coming in as a result of this connection field of the community and you. And I'm just so grateful for it. So thank you for being here. But one thing that came in, and again, it almost, you know, I giggle sometimes at what comes through because, you know, I connect with others, higher selves and oversouls and et cetera, right? And so, you know, there's such a deep level of trust that is ignited and must be present to be, you know, clearly bring through messages. I remember hearing that, you know, that Emily, amongst others, you know, will be sort of transcending and bringing in a whole new blueprint of astrology, you know. And again, because I haven't really studied any of it, I'm like, this is kind of a big, you know, like, okay. So, but as you're speaking, I mean, you're doing it. You're doing it. And as you're bringing it in, and as, you know, the two of you are engaging about some of these dwarf planets and other planets that, you know, haven't necessarily been brought forth into greater awareness yet, what I'm seeing is, you know, similarly to I guess it could be applied to everything in our reality, right? It's the more and more and more we open ourselves up into that place of, you know, of that magic within, right? Of that connection within, and, you know, getting into, you know, greater bandwidths of that 0 point. What was showing up is, you know, there's massive layers of planetary systems and stars and things that exist and always have. But because of where we, you know, been resonating in terms of our consciousness, we just haven't been able to see it. So there's this whole layer and level of the veils of illusion that extend beyond third density into the whole 12th dimensional framework, you know, of our universal system. And I'm having this complete like duh aha moment right now, like duh, like what it was I thinking was just subject to Earth. But it's so incredible and it's really exciting. So, and
we're becoming galactic citizens again. We're remembering because we have, you know, we're made of stardust. All of us are made of stardust. So and that is physically true. So we are remembering that we have come from out there, other solar systems, other galaxies, etc. And I mean, many of my friends already channel galactic beings, but that's going to happen more and more as Uranus moves into Gemini, Uranus representing the galactic, Gemini representing communication. And it does that fully in 2026, starts in 25, fully in 26. So that's when I think we're going to have much more overt galactic communication, but it's here now. It's starting now. You can connect to the Palladians or whoever, the Andromedans, the Arcturians, many people do now. But it's that sense of this isn't new territory, it's old territory that we are remembering. And that becomes super exciting. So I don't know how charts are going to be done. I have no idea how, because astrology is going to go in such leaps and bounds, I think, in unimaginable ways. And of course, then we get into the whole subject of time, because time only really exists in 3D. And astrologers, Emily, as you will know, are so absolutely precise about the birth time, otherwise nothing works. And all of us are, otherwise you can't get the clock face of the chart right. But if we're stepping out of 3D, what does that mean for a birth chart? How do we construct a birth chart? Do we even how does all of that work? And so this is very exciting new territory, I think.
Yeah, I feel like what I'm hearing in that is so much is going to be revealed through the consciousness, of plasma, and how it's going to come in to kind of bridge the gap, so to speak, within the linear constructs of time. So it reveals itself, in this whole new malleable way that, allows for us to transition, into a digestible format of that. But, as I'm looking at your blueprint, it's so exciting. And, and also, the fact that you already are trailblazing and bringing in all this new awareness. And it feels like within the next, few linear years, you're opening up this massive bridge. And I don't know if this is part of your, blueprint or gene key, but it looks like you are this, this really massive portal keeper, and gatekeeper and opener, if you will, of assisting humanity and really digesting, mapping, navigating through what cannot even be imagined in this now moment, in terms of accessibility to, to these different layers of astrology, so to speak. So,
well, you've just given me a real gift, Brooklyn. I mean, that was a real gift. And actually, somebody yesterday said something similar, and I was going, yeah. So you've just given me a real gift, because they're saying again, listen, behave, what you're here to do. So yeah, so thank you. I really feel goosebumpy about that. So thank you so much.
Thank you. So exciting.
Yeah, gosh. I feel so much gratitude, Pam, for you for joining us today. This has been such an incredible conversation, and I just want to thank you for all the wisdom that you share, for your heart, for allowing us to expand into greater heart activation and higher levels of consciousness. You are such an inspiration.
Oh, bless you, bless you, bless you, bless you. I just do what I love, and I'm just the messenger. So if we all follow our passion, then life works. It really does. So thank you so much for asking me. It's been really joyful, actually. I've loved it. Really enjoyed it.
You're such an embodiment. One more thing I just have to share, because it's just coming this whole time, is you have a massive amount of green, like emerald green light that's been like shooting out of your hands. Like, I shouldn't say shooting, but like emanating and shining out of your hands this entire time. And at first I thought, oh, maybe it's, but anyways, just want to bring that in case it decides
so is that heart energy coming out of?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you said that. I know we're, coming to a sort of a soft close of our space here, but absolutely, it just further confirms what's been dropping in a lot in the last few weeks, is that we are, our heart chakra and our hand chakras have always been intimately connected. And as we're, ascending and coming into, greater and greater bandwidths of our monadic framework and sort of that one chakra system, if you will, there's going to be even more of a relationship, a palpable relationship between the heart and the hands, and, and expression through the hands of our heart essence. So I just had to point that out, because it just kept getting brighter. It wasn't like one of those things that was like, oh, it was there for a second and then it was gone. It was like, more and more and more. So again,
that's another huge gift. Thank you so much. I'll treasure both those gifts. So grateful.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today, as you've co-created such a beautiful space here.
Yes, I know that there's so many fans that are tuning in, and we're probably most all familiar with your YouTube channel, Pam Gregory Astrology. I know that you recently stopped doing one-on-one sessions with clients, but you have such a wealth of trainings that are available on your website, which is pamgregory.com.
Bless you. Thank you so much. It's been really fun. Really enjoyed it.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful day and a wonderful life. Thank you.
You too. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye for now.